Hi there, and welcome to the video. I'm John Ivison. This week, I am joined by Israel's ambassador to Canada, Iddo Moed, to talk about the impending decision by the International Court of Justice on South Africa's claim that Israel's leaders and military commanders had genocidal intent with the invasion of Gaza. Ambassador, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me, John.
That charge, I guess, particularly for Israel, is the most odious that there is. That there was an intent to destroy an ethnic, racial, or religious group. Has Israel, do you think, in the eyes of the world, successfully debunked that charge?
I think the world is shocked by the fact that the Jewish state that was the victim of the worst crime against humanity, which was the Holocaust during the Second World War, I think that the world is shocked at the fact that there is a country that even ponders to accuse Israel of that. The issue is really that what Israel has been doing is defending itself against this genocidal terrorist organization that is backed by Iran, that has a similar intent against Israel. But when it comes to the ICJ, we also see the dilemma, actually a dilemma that Israel also has, because we are, of course, very much depending on all of us in global order, depending on international organizations. And so the question arises, was the ICJ actually used in a proper manner? And so what we've been asking is that this accusation, this blood libel by South Africa will be rejected because it actually turns the international law order upside down on its head. It's what we call lawfare. It's using legal instruments that exist to protect the legal world order in order to attack a country which is law-abiding, which does everything in its power to protect civilians, no matter what their identity is, and keep them out of harm's way against an organization that wants to sacrifice human lives for the sake of their evil intents.
So the court will issue an order on Friday. It's unlikely to decide that genocide was, or I guess wasn't, committed. But it could, South Africa is calling for provisional measures that could compel Israel by law to either stop its offensive or be ordered to provide greater protection for civilians or expanded humanitarian aid. I should point out that the ICJ settles disputes between member states, and Hamas is not a member state. So the judges could order Israel to implement a universal ceasefire with no corresponding obligation on Hamas, which clearly would not be fair. But yet, you talk about Israel being a state of law. Prime Minister Netanyahu has already said that nothing will stop us, essentially that he will ignore the ruling, just as Vladimir Putin did. But will the government listen to calls for increased humanitarian aid or greater protection for civilians?
Let's dissect this question bit by bit. Let's look at what let's not try to speculate about what the ICJ is going to decide. The judges will consider the case and will come up with whatever decision they will have. But let's look at Israel and see if indeed the comparison between Israel and Russia is valid. So Israel is a democracy, and Israel is working in tandem with the international organizations on a daily basis, on almost an hourly basis, to facilitate the flow of humanitarian assistance for the people in Gaza, because it is obliged to do that by international law. And also, and much more importantly, it's because we see that as our security interest, to make sure that those who are not part of the terrorist machine that Hamas put in place, those people must be protected, and they should have any kind of assistance that can be delivered to them. So we facilitate that. We create safe zones for them. We inform them of their locations. We inform them of incoming attacks. We protect their movements with our own tanks and soldiers so that Hamas will not harm them. So there is a huge difference already in the basis of the case. But also when it comes to the principle of abiding by international law, Israel is a law-abiding country. However, given the fact that this court may take a decision which will tie our hands in our defense against a genocidal terrorist organization, we will find ourselves in a huge dilemma. We know that if we stop the fight, Hamas will continue and will perform the same massacre again and again. They've promised that, and we believe that they will do that given the chance to do it. So are we going to allow them to butcher and rape and murder and mutilate more civilians, and by that, in the name of international law, or are we going to protect ourselves against this genocidal terrorist organization? I think the answer to that is very clear, and this is what we've been saying. We cannot sacrifice our people in a case that turns international law on its head.
Let's turn to Canada. All we've heard from the Canadian government on this is that they have an unwavering support for the law, for the court, and they do not accept the premise of the case that was brought against Israel. Now, students of Byzantium have gazed over this, trying to figure out whether that is in fact support for Israel. I interpreted it to mean that the premise mentioned is that South Africa's charge of genocide. Is that how you interpret it?
So there can be a lot of interpretations, and therefore we think that there needs to be more clarity. We think that such a message should be clearer. Where does Canada stand? And we also made sure that that message gets through. Our case, we believe that it is important to call out this genocidal accusation, call it out for what it is. It's a blood libel. And so in that sense, we understand, similarly like Canada, we respect the ICJ, but we also feel that the accusation in itself needs to be addressed as one that is vile, that has ill intentions behind it.
Do you think that the Canadian government is trying to be on all sides of this argument, possibly for partisan political gain?
I think that Canadian government made very clear where they stand when it comes to this war with Hamas. Canadian government came back again and again with a similar message that Israel has a right to protect itself, a very clear condemnation of the terrorist attacks performed by Hamas, the call for the release of all hostages immediately, and also making sure that in any kind of future scenario, Hamas will not be part of it. So in that sense, the position of Canada is very, very clear and in support of Israel.
So I think it's clear to me, and I think to most people, that South Africa has cheapened the charge of genocide by raising it here. But there are very troubling cases, even for people who support Israel, where there has been perhaps a lack of clarity in distinguishing between civilians and military targets. And it seems to be increasingly the case in the past few days. There was a case today, Thursday, of a shelling in Gaza City where thousands were gathered to collect aid and were apparently bombed. There was a case yesterday where there was a UN compound that was bombed. Do you accept that Israel has not always distinguished between civilians and military as clearly as it might have done?
Well, I can tell you that we are doing first a few things. One is we do our best and our utmost to operate only based on solid intelligence regarding any kind of presence and activity of terrorists. We have to remember that Hamas bears full responsibility for hiding within and embedding themselves with the civilian population in hospitals, wearing medical uniform, carrying vests of press, of media, and while they are shooting, you can find it today online. There are videos of two so-called journalists firing rockets from wherever they stand. So there are a lot of claims made against Israel because Hamas understands the international game very, very well and tries to pin up on Israel as many accusations as possible. When they shoot from underneath hospitals, when they hide their ammunition within schools or kindergartens, or even underneath the bedroom of their baby, the entrance to the tunnels, this is horrific, and this needs to be called out, and we are providing that information, and it is out there. I'm not sure that everybody gets the chance to see that. So what we're trying to do is really do our utmost to make sure that generally the population stays out of harm's way, but also specifically when we are trying to target the terrorists, to inform them of an incoming attack, which cost us much. And let me just remind all of us that just 2 days ago, 21 Israeli soldiers were killed while trying to destroy Hamas infrastructure, which we could have easily bombed from the air, but we decided that the right thing to do is to destroy it on the ground. And because of a Hamas attack, 21 lives were lost of young Israelis who are fighting for defense of Israel. So we pay a very heavy price for this humanitarian effort, but we believe that that is the right way. We will not change it. We believe in life. We believe in life of everybody, and we believe in coexistence. And this is our goal. At the end of the day, we'll have to find a way to live together. But right now, our goal is to make sure that our security is guaranteed. And this is why we are waging this war against Hamas.
I think a war like the one we're seeing, which is on our screens 24/7, probably more vivid than any war we've seen probably ever. There is a degree of fatigue, obviously, on the ground, where conditions seem to be getting worse and worse. But also around the world, even among people who support Israel. Are we nearing the end game? I mean, the IDF seems to be moving south. Can you give us any sense of how close we are to the point where you can say we have cleared Hamas from Gaza?
I can give you a scenario how it ends in an hour. Hamas puts down their weapons and release the hostages. 136 hostages are held by Hamas. Bodies, body parts, women, children, elderly. The rape and the mutilation and whatever atrocities are still going on while this is happening. So we cannot stop until they are back. But if they are released in an hour, everything will stop. If Hamas lay down their weapons, this whole thing stops. It's not in our hands. We are forced to fight this war because Hamas tells us we will continue to attack you again and again. So we cannot allow this to happen again. We cannot allow another 1,200 people to be butchered and attacked as happened before. We have to make sure that this kind of atrocities cannot take place anymore. And so Hamas must be dismantled. The infrastructure must be destroyed. Hamas leadership must be disbanded, and they must not have any control of this area or any area near Israel in the future.
Ambassador, I'd like to thank you for coming on. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me, John.
Thank you.